Good afternoon. I am Christoph Sarwein, the Academic Director of ICAD, and I'm here in Arizona today. Beautiful sky, and I'm here with Dr. Tian Dayton, and it's a great moment for me to meet you today.
It's a lovely moment for me.
Thank you. And I was thinking, do we really introduce Tian Dayton? And I was a bit shy, and then I went into three possibilities. Allow me to share that with you, please. For 100 years, a bit more, we went into psychoanalysis. We worked on the subconscious. Freud died only 80 years ago. In the 60s, 70s, we thought that we should be goal-driven, cognition, behaviors, and we evolved into this second layer. And more recently, we also evolved and discovered that actually life and being human is a lot about experience. It's about experiencing life, and it just opened the door to beautiful therapeutic modalities. But it's also so much supported by all the neuroscience findings we have today. So we got those three axes. And at the core, every time I talk to people, the name of Tian Dayton is coming back. At the core of that, the three axes of psychotherapy, and the fourth axis, like a space-time continuum, of neuroscience. So I was thinking of all that, and then I was thinking, yeah, but there's something also very important, is who is Tian Dayton? And I went, okay, now there's another way to describe it, less cognitive, more behavioral, which is basically that you are a doctor in clinical psychology, that you authored 15 books, maybe more now, that you're a very senior fellow of the American Society for Psychodrama and Sociometry and Group Psychotherapy, and that you live in New York City, and that you're senior fellow at the Meadows. So that's more about what you do in the behavior. Now allow me to share something more personal. That was a month ago. I'm working with this woman. She's been, working with me as my patient for 3 or 4 years, different treatment centers, a lot of significant issues, including adoption. And we eventually decided that it was time for her to go to the Willows at the Meadows. She's back, and a month ago, I shared with her that I was going to Arizona, and I was giving this talk, and I was also planning to meet Tian Dayton. And all of a sudden, the tears are glowing in her eyes. And she's going, oh my God. I'm going in my brain, what I have done. And actually, those tears were tears of joy. And so I invited her to explain, and she said, for 20 years, I've been receiving therapy, I've been institutionalized, I had medication, I had treatment, rehab, 12-step and everything. Now, by coincidence, in February, I was at the Willows, and Tian Dayton comes in, and no one gave me so much warmth and love, and in experiencing healing process around my adoption. I don't know whether you remember that, but she does vividly. So what she said basically is, send Tian all my love and my gratitude. And I think that's another way to introduce you.
That's lovely.
And that's more human rights. So with all that, there's something important here. You're coming to ICAD, London, 6th to the 8th of May. I'd like, without disclosing everything, just to understand what is your aim, what are you going to bring there, and maybe share a little bit about all that.
I will bring psychodrama. I will bring role play. I'll bring sociometry, and what this young woman experienced. So, in a nutshell, if you've been adopted, for example, what lives inside of you is where's my mother? Where's the person? Where's my father? And in psychodrama, you can, what we call concretize that. You can talk to that person, and it's remarkable how much a surrogate stops becoming a surrogate and for the moment becomes that real person. So when you are doing grief work, when you are doing work with what never got a chance to happen, what never got a chance to be said, who I never touched, who I never spoke to, the name I never said out loud. It is remarkable how much a psychodrama can gratify. I don't know if gratify is the right word, but can give back that lost piece. Whether it's a piece of self or a relationship with somebody else, it's simple, it's role play. At its best, psychodrama is free of encumbrance. You can go anywhere. A well-trained person will let you go anywhere with a psychodrama. Now, I've created this model that I'll do at ICAD called relational trauma repair. And that sometimes I think creates the idea that there are very specific things you do in psychodrama. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. But at its core, you go anywhere that needs to be gone to, whether it's in the past or the present or the future. Psychodrama should be able to take you there. It should also be deeply painful and hilariously fun and opening up. It should open up parts of you that need opening up, that want to open up. So this model I created was, well, the genesis of it really was that somebody wanted me to work with her in California, work with all her people, and I knew I didn't want to make as many trips there as she would have liked and maybe needed. So I thought, how can I get the basic things across for clients? How can I create a model that's easy to teach people? And how can I also be true to both psychodrama but also the addictions field, which is psychoeducational, which is a brilliant part of the addictions field. The addictions field kind of grew like like what in America, organically. I've been around it for so long. And what it is today is not what it was. It was a mom and pop industry. And we did whatever worked. And that made us, on the one hand, well, I mean, it felt fast and loose at moments. We were trying new things, but we were innovative. And we could see, because the need was so immediate and so great, we could see what worked. We could see before our eyes what was working. And we weren't beholden to some of the we were a little freer in what we were willing to try, let's say. Psychodrama came in there, into the addictions field. That's really where it's kept alive in the United States primarily, has been in the addictions field. Why? I think the intensity of psychodrama matches the intensity of living with addiction. And as a child of an alcoholic myself, our family was a constant psychodrama. And the intensity in our family, trauma puts you in black and white, it takes away, trauma gets you in emotional extremes. You go from 0 to 10, 10 to 0. You go from numbness and shutdown to high intensity and then back down. But we don't live in 4, 5, and 6. 4, 5, and 6 aren't what we're about if we've lived with addiction. We don't know it. We don't know how to recreate it. We have to learn it in recovery. We have to trust that we don't know it because we think that 0 to 10 is something desirable. I mean, this is part of the stinking thinking of addiction, that living on the emotional extremes has something to recommend itself. And completely missing the point that living in 4, 5, and 6 is where the depth is. It's where you can expand outward. It's the meditative state that goes everywhere. It's the behavior that has the emotion linked with the thought, linked with the word, so that you have a fighting chance of understanding yourself and being understood by another person. So psychodrama, I think, really could slide into that. And of course, in the addiction world and in the addicted family, there's there's such a lack of emotional sobriety and a lack of emotional literacy. So we need to find ways of doing that. And because trauma has the effect of what, shutting the thinking mind down, when we're in a very scary moment, a terrifying whatever moment, the thinking mind shuts down, the limbic system revs up, and we are all action with no thought. What happens is that we collect all the sensory data of that experience. We take in the smell, the sound, the voice, all of that, the touch, but we don't think about it because our thinking mind is shut down. We're frozen in fear. So we store all that in our body, in our mind body, but there's no keywords, no way of recalling it, no way of giving it a beginning, a middle, and an end. So these things live inside of our bodies, and they get triggered because memory is state dependent. So if we clients, I'm sure you see this in a group, you see this a lot. If there's yelling in the group, you look around and some people are on the edge of their chairs and some people are just absolutely shutting down, and because they're going back to wherever they were then. So psychodrama, you learn what you learn in a 12-step program. You learn to tolerate the intensity of your feelings without exploding or imploding. You learn to sit in the same chair without jumping up. You learn to listen without just pointing a finger of blame, hopefully. And eventually your thinking mind starts to come back on board and make sense of your feelings. And then you think, oh, why did I get triggered right then? You start to let the situation that's triggering you guide you to what it might be that is sitting inside of you in that wordless state. Psychodrama allows this to happen very organically. So that's one of the things we're bringing to ICAD. The model is, as I was saying, psychoeducational, so that the reason I did it that way is because I value so much this giving the client the information. I come from the old days when the idea was that as a therapist you had all the good ideas and the client was supposed to sit there and you spoon-fed them to them when they were ready. Well, that's not the addiction field. The addiction field is throwing everything at you. The information, the learning, the books, the whatever, and saying, figure this out, get on board with me, and together we're going to find our way out of this. So in order for that to happen, you need research, you need information. So I've integrated that into sociometry, which is part of Moreno's triadic system, psychodrama, sociometry, group psychotherapy. And sociometry deals with all the group dynamics. So I have done something that I thought psychodramatists would hate, which is remove some of the spontaneity and put, for example, feelings all over the floor. That's where it all started. Would you like me to go into that a bit?
Yes, please.
I had I do training groups, and one of my people getting training, very nice man, very devoted to working with his population, which was Latino population, and he was just a very devoted man. He wanted to bring recovery to, and he came in so crestfallen, said, I'm the only therapist, I have 35 people, and I'm supposed to do something with them. And he was practically in tears, and we were all practically in tears listening to him. It sounded awful and impossible. It sounded impossible. Afterwards, I thought, if anyone should be able to solve this, a psychodramatist, a sociometrist should be able to solve this. We know how to work with groups. So I came back the next group, and I thought, why don't I just put, you do feeling checks. So I'm so sick of hi, happy man. So I thought, let's put them on the floor and see what happens. Let's put, not 5, sociometry is very limited usually, to put maybe 4 or 5 things on the floor and answer questions. Let's put 20 and see what happens.
Then saturate all that.
It changed everything to put 20. It changed everything to put cue cards instead of just thinking it up in the moment. Because what happened was you start to ask criterion questions. Walk over to a feeling you're experiencing right now. Stand there. Give us a sentence of why you're experiencing it. Okay, interesting. So then people are listening to each other share. That warms them up. That makes them feel more comfortable sharing. Suddenly I'm not alone. You share. Oh, I felt that last week. That makes me feel like opening up. Next question, walk over to a feeling you don't like feeling so much. Well, that's an entry into a kind of trauma work because we tend to push down the feelings we've shut down. That's such an easy entry. So then people start to talk about, I don't like feeling anxious. And the reason I don't like it, so then you move into something that you cannot do if you're debriefing somebody through words. If you look at somebody who's been traumatized and say, what feeling don't you like feeling? First of all, they don't necessarily know. Second of all, if you say, well, when were you feeling that? Tell me the story about that. They were shut down at the time that happened. So if you're asking them their prefrontal cortex was shut down. So you're asking their prefrontal cortex to tell you about something it didn't register to begin with. So then they feel foolish. You feel like a failure. Then you start kind of digging in so you don't feel like such a failure, and they start kind of adding information that may or may not be genuine. So they feel like they're pleasing you, and pretty soon what happens? They either feel like it's not working, or they say, the worst thing is they adapt your version of the story. I think we really probably felt this and this and this. Or you shouldn't feel this and this and this. Now, that's the last thing a traumatized person needs. They need to discover themselves from the bottom up. So the simple thing of moving feelings around the floor allows that to happen. Allows them to go on their own journey of self-discovery. Then you go on another feeling. What feeling do you not like when you encounter it in another person? Well, I just can rush over to anxious because there was so much anxiety in my family when I don't like being around it. And that's the same for everybody. Everybody knows. You could answer that question 3 times. But the point is it becomes an organic process that's easy for a therapist to learn how to do. It's easy for a client to do. It's a process that allows them to hear each other and to share. So that is the feeling. The floor checks are my favorite part of this model. They just have legs. They work everywhere, and I've done them with 1,000 people. Over the years, I test my own material, right? So I just watched it work exactly the same way, which is what you want to have happen in Nashville, in Kentucky, in California. It just worked the same way. Years of that. So it's consistent. And then you can also put anything you want on a floor check. So then I throw out, or I used to lecture on trauma symptoms, right, to people. First of all, they fell asleep. I mean, after you look at about 3, you just look around and people are just starting to get completely overwhelmed, and it's not an easy way to learn about trauma. So I thought, what if I put trauma symptoms on the floor? That felt really sort of dangerous and like risk-taking, but I had all these levels I'd try things out, and first with therapists and some clients. And so that was amazing. What ended up happening is that you had little case studies popping up all over the floor. And people would share what is one of these symptoms that you find you get snagged up on.
Symptoms as in rage, shaking, sweating, or
yes, hypervigilance, trouble taking and carrying and support, body issues, somatic issues, sleeping issues, rage issues. Well, I do another one for anger. That's the trauma one.
Itself, right?
Yes, that one's fun. That's the trauma one, and it's a way of teaching about trauma that's immediate, that allows for each person to have their own little case study. It allows it to come alive, You're not telling somebody, you don't have to explain the symptom, which is boring to teach and boring to hear. You're letting the group do the work. So it has a magical quality. But we mentioned anger. That got so interesting because, okay, so anger. I looked all the way anger manifests: criticism, whining, negativity, rage, stonewalling. It manifests in more ways than we tend to think about. So I tried that on the floor, and that one that's a big success. That one always works, and people love doing it. It's great for men's groups. It's great for anybody, but you start to find out how you manifest anger, or how other people manifest anger that you don't like, or what was your family's go-to? What form of anger manifesting triggers you the most? You can ask all these questions, so you get a lot of information in a short time. And any of these things, of course, can lead to a role play, because in trauma work, the warm-up is everything. The last thing you want to do with a psychodrama around trauma is say, is there something really terrible that happened to you that you'd like to work on right now? I mean, everybody works that way a little bit, but to warm people up so that they stumble upon
They start to reveal themselves in the process.
To themselves and to the group.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you do the trauma work, you see it in the eyes, you see it on the person, and then all you have to say is, who do you want to say something to? And then who could play that person for you? What do you want to say? And then they say it, and then reverse roles, and now what? And then they stand in their own shoes, and they stand in the shoes of the other, which is key to healing relational problems, because a lot of people do psychodrama without role reversal. It's not psychodrama. Role reversal is key to psychodrama. And if you don't use role reversal, what you do is strengthen the ego. You strengthen that person's position without ever softening it to the empathic position, without ever asking them, stand in the shoes of the other person. What's it like to look at you from the outside in? What's it like to feel that other person's experience? And in homes where there's been damage from parents, that's also useful, because one of your takeaways is, wait a minute, this wasn't all about me. My parent had their own story. They aimed all this abuse at me, but in fact, they were kind of a mess. And when I stand in their shoes, I get that. And another thing you can do in psychodrama is do your parents' psychodrama. Just stand in the role of the parent and choose people to talk to. So there are endless places it can go.
Well, it's very interesting here that it's the way to work with asymmetry. I mean, there's this obvious idea that is, to me, quite wrong, that relationship is this kind of, we try to be even. Emmanuel Levinas, the French philosopher, just made an hypothesis. Relationships are always non-symmetrical. Doesn't mean asymmetrical, but non-symmetrical. So
at any given moment?
Yeah. And it varies, and they're not structurally like that, but there's always an element of non-symmetry. Mm-hmm. So therefore, it's fantastic to try to be able to work out the back and forth between putting yourself in the shoes of the other, because then we experience profoundly this inherent nature of the non-symmetrical variable moments here that translate into energy, into facial expression, different things. So I think there's something beautiful here that I've experienced as a patient receiving psychodrama. I'm never trained, but I received a lot, once a week for many months.
Oh, that's wonderful. So you understand
in London, and then I had the privilege to observe one of your colleagues in London in a treatment center when I was doing my training. So I got the gist of all that, and I really, even as an observer, something was happening for me. So this told me how much is resonating at a deeper level than just the cortex level, which is to me the crest of the wave, right? I'd like to come back to something, if you don't mind, Tian, because I think there's something that I've experienced, and maybe we can describe it for people listening to us. We are on our feet in the ascent of man, one of the characteristics that we all share, that we are bipeds, we walk on 2 feet, right? Unless something wrong, everyone is sharing that. So that's very transversal. Now, something is happening in the brain when the brain tells to walk and when the feet are walking, talking back to the brain. There's something very, very body-mind linked, I believe, there. Mindful walking. So, you put your feelings on the floor and you invite people to walk, choosing, and step onto the feeling, right? If I remember it properly. So, how would you describe this kind of moment by moment, the connection between the feet grounded on the earth, the energy maybe going up to the brain, and how can we just explain this very moment where we walk and we step on the feeling? So,
well, I mean, you're getting up and walking in itself changes your body chemistry, right? Walk across the room, you're different at the end of the walk. So that is part of that model. That's exactly right. Is just getting up out of your chair and walking to something and claiming that space, making a choice. Sociometry is all about choosing. And we're choosing not just, well, you can do sociometry on a paper, you can do it from a chair, but in these cases, you're doing it with your whole body. So I know what you're talking about, that it's a neuropsychological experience. The same way a role play is, the same way a role reversal is. It's interpersonal neurobiology, so that the parts of us that are reaching towards someone, a baby, for example. I saw a mother. I was flying today, and I saw a mother changing her baby. She had these earphones on, and it was all I could do not to just walk up to her and say, just don't take them off, please, because this baby, look, I noticed the baby looked sort of dissociated, right? And the baby may have been sleeping, tired, so that may be it, but the baby just looked kind of dissociated. And then I looked at the mother, and she had earphones on. The baby's language is sound and touch. So, and this one was really loud. So, I mean, this one baby was really young.
So the eye system was not in place for very
Yes, the eye system and the sound was the main thing.
So that's a
So we're
fantastic way
bringing all of that.
to parent a baby, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of helps thinking of the still face experiment here. Remember that awful thing that still stresses me whenever I watch it from my personal story. So it's almost.
So Psychodrama brings in all what you were touching on. It brings in all of the senses.
So I was thinking on the back of the neurobiology associated with all that, also some basic Einstein theory that when we move a mass in a space, the energy changes. That's basic general relativity law. But if I walk towards you, I'm just doing that. The energy between us is changing. And how is it that astrophysics, neuroscience, common sense, ancient tradition. I think in one of your paper you made reference to the ancient Greek dramaturgy in the myth. We have 1,000 years. I'll let you speak on the ancient Greek tragedy. I think it's beautiful. There's something there that is so obvious to me, so human, instinctively human, and there. We gave this kind of false empowerment to the cortex with the idea that the thoughts are more powerful than what made us human in the first place, the movement and the emotions, the limbic system that preceded prehistorically anthropology. Very simple, the cortex. How is it that this is so difficult? I'm convinced with what you say, but we have some hard time setting that to some of our colleagues sometimes who are very cognitive. It's not that easy. And we've got the ancient Greek tragedy.
I mean, I think that, I'm doing this book, The Soulful Journey of Recovery, and I'm using a lot of exercises in it. And the reason I'm doing that is because millennials are known to like experience. So I think they're figuring that out.
That's fantastic what you say.
Yeah, I think this is being figured out.
Yeah, there's something there, huh?
The younger people, when my kids who are not, I mean, they're in their late 30s, 40s, but they're just as likely to give us an experience for Christmas as a thing. And I think people are I don't know why we got so, this, I guess it was the way people thought. The billiard ball sort of model where there's nothing in between this and me. This space is all dead.
Supposedly avoid.
Avoid, yeah. So I think, all of the neuroscience, the chaos theory, they've all sort of debunked that. So anybody who knows anything, who reads, who studies, is figuring that out. And there's so much more information available now that it was a more threatening, I don't know why I think our feelings really frighten us. Yeah. I think it's a simple thing, and we have the illusion of control if we can use our thoughts. And I think people are just scared of, we also don't know how. I mean, older cultures aren't so afraid of feeling. They're just not so afraid of feeling. In America, the other thing, it's, the sad part is, and I can barely even talk about it, is, you learn this with your parent.
Yeah.
And how well we are or aren't parenting children. And children, children want to be with you all the time. I have a little granddaughter who's 3, and I pick her up from nursery school. And while she's still there, I put her on my lap and I say, because once you go down the stairs, she's not interested in talking about nursery school anymore. So, what did you do? I miss Mama, and I did, and we did a painting, but nursery school is 2 hours long for her, and she misses her mother. Yeah. Children are wired, right, to bond. We come into this world they come in with such a powerful need to bond to their parents. And if their parents aren't available, they are profoundly lonely, and no one wants to talk about this. But that's where you start being afraid of your feelings. Mm. Because if your parent isn't easy access for you to work out these feelings that are rocking, or if you are too lonely, you learn to shut down. And if you learn to shut down, first of all, you don't even know what you're feeling anymore. So when you start to feel it, it's a foreign land. So I think there is more of that around than we think. And that's heartbreaking, but maybe if we can start to talk about it.
I'm always surprised. You're so right. And, that's my experience as well. And I'm always surprised that no one tells. And when I say it, people contradict it. It's very, very weird. That the child is born neotonous. There's something specific about the human race. They're born very early, and they have 6, 8, 10 years. We had 6, 8, 10 years to develop. There's a reason for that, because we're hypersocial animals. So we need to learn social things that could not be learned in the womb. A little cobra snake is born perfectly perfect and ready to bite, with a lot of venom actually. We're not. And no one tells that to parents. And when I tried the other day to explain, how to value the identity of the child, try to affirm for the emotions and to work with all that. And a parent answered me, "How dare you tell me how to be a parent?" And I said, "Why do you ask that?" And he said, well, it was a man. Basically, because I am the janitor. I am the one who planted the sperm. I'm the one who biologically transmitted my genes. So that's to prove that I'm a good parent. So it was almost the biology prevailing from, well, nature prevailing on nurture here. He felt entitled from nature and didn't really want to pay attention, maybe of shame, didn't want to pay attention to nurture. And I just positate, your child is unfinished when he's born. Because that's a human condition, nothing to do with you. But if you don't hear that, you're going to create from a state of parenting a trait of dysfunctioning, painful adult experience.
Yeah, the neurological wiring that processes emotion is not fully developed at birth. And the place that the neurological wiring is developed and laid down into the child is in the arms of the parent.
Yeah.
And the parents, babies are born with a fully developed amygdala. You know how your baby will be in your arm and there's a door banging and the baby's capable of a full startle response. But they have no equipment to modulate that startle response. Their prefrontal cortex won't come on board for many years. Their, I think, hippocampus 4 or 5 years ago, that breeds context. So for them, that was just a loud noise that they can't read. So they are entirely dependent on the rocking and the cooing and the talking to bring brought back into a state of equilibrium. And through this repeated rocking and cooing and soothing, a baby will actually lay down the neural wiring that will allow them to tolerate strong emotion. If that wiring is never laid down, that kid is going to be picking up a drink because they would feel something and they can't tolerate it. They're it's like putting a big circuit through a thin cord. A lot of too much electricity through a too little cord. Zzz. Yeah.
Creates a lot of electromagnetic reaction.
Yeah.
Now, when I was listening to you right now, hearing you right now, I had the thought of almost like we need to plug our cortex into our children's cortex because they're not wired already and they're not developed. As in, I am going to love you, my son, until you can love yourself, until you can esteem and value yourself. You need my validation, my value.
Yes,
It's actually coming from a thought process.
Yes.
Until your thought process will be mature enough to regulate that.
Yes.
And it comes with behavior in soothing and hugging, and also maybe thinking for him because he's not able to think.
Oh, yes.
Because a part of the limbic system is kind of operating. And I'd like to, you wrote this beautiful paper about fear. It made me reflect on something that I propose my patients sometimes, which is basically we are praised, as in, before we became mastering the world with our little capacity here, a million years ago, the Australopithecus robustus, or Africanus, in the Rift Valley, was eaten by predators. So we are prey.
We're prey to predators?
We are prey. We were predated by lions and tigers. We were just prey. We were not on the predator side. We just little. We developed tools to acquire food and all that, the fire. But before that, we just apes, but that size, lost in the bush with a lot of tigers around. We survived in numbers, socializing, grouping, but the central nervous system primitively was organized around fear management for one reason. The fear of the antelope has nothing to do with the fear of the tiger. It has not evolved. It still is, even though we have the illusion that we feel less.
You're absolutely right.
And so therefore,
fear and love.
Yeah,
fear and attachment.
Attachment. And attachment is needed to survive, right? It's a surviving mechanism. It's a primary need to be human.
And when you refuse the attachment as a parent, when you can't allow the baby to, when, I was my mother, and when my children were young, and every mother says this, I can't go anywhere alone anymore. I've got this little person wanting to, and what do? You open your soul up. That's the only way out of that, is just to be. They need to climb all over you. They need to, grab your face and this. Then they reverse roles. Again, my little granddaughter, just as a 2-year-old, would take my face and hold it. I love you, and that's because her mother does that with her. So it's just reversed. She's just doing what was done with her because if I'm so valuable that my mother does this with me and she loves me so much, then, my other little granddaughter, if they live in this undifferentiated universe, they don't know who is who. So I came over and I was giving her a lunch, and she wanted me to, and she said, feed you.
She wanted to keep.
And that means feed me.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't differentiate.
Oh, the you and the me.
Yeah. She said, so when she says hug you, she means hug me.
Yeah.
Because me and you are all undifferentiated.
Yeah.
So when you turn away from the child, the child's world goes dead.
It's a near-death experience,
goes
right?
dark.
Yeah.
Well, you are the world to the child.
Yeah.
And if the parent can't tolerate being the world to a child, they deprive the child of the world.
Yeah.
Eventually you're the go-between, but initially you are the world.
So it's an apocalypse for the child.
It's an
when
apocalypse.
The world falls apart.
It's an apocalypse for the child. Oh, it's so tragic to say, but it's so true.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of children running around out there with their own little apocalypses inside their hearts. And
I've been probably drinking 35 years on that apocalyptic experience of life. And I could. I think this is important. I could not access any form of sobriety before I could make sense of my own apocalypse, and until I could reunite my cold, deprived body, my hyper emotional arousal, and my falsely uncontrolled cognitive brain. And this started with the body. And I'm just linking that to what you say, that the entry key is there for us. It's the body. It's the one that never cheats, right?
Bottom up therapy.
Body doesn't cheat.
Body doesn't lie. Body speaks. Body doesn't
lie.
Cheat.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's
exactly right.
French.
No, but it's better. Cheat is good. Body doesn't cheat, because that's exactly what we do. We cheat ourselves. We cheat our partners. We cheat our children.
Yeah.
That cheat is a great word.
So I want you just we could carry on probably for 3 days chatting on all that.
Yeah.
I just want to come back to something important. The social atom.
That's fun. That's the social atom. Once again, Moreno devised the social atom. It influenced the genogram. But the social atom is much more fluid. You take a piece of paper, let circles represent females, triangles males. You can use squares for institutions. In Psychodrama, of course, you add anything and everything you want. Your aunt so-and-so, your pet, your housekeeper, whoever was. Social atom is a diagram of relationships. You use circles to represent females, triangles to represent males. You can use squares for institutions. You include anything and everything on your social atom. The genogram is a lineage, right? It's father, mother, father, mother, father. But the social atom you can put anything on, which actually is very useful for today's
any
families.
Any significant human being involved into
any
life.
Significant dog, any significant. You can put 12-step programs on your social atom if you want to.
Yeah, home goal.
But exactly. But the beauty of it is that you locate everything in the. I usually ask people to first locate themselves on the page. Well, that's diagnostic, because are they small and in the corner? Are they huge and in the middle? Where are they and how are they? And then your significant relationships, which continues to give you so much information, because maybe the mother is overlapping and enormous, maybe the father is distant cold, maybe the father is big and, however they appear on the page. Then you learn to read the social atom. But the way first somebody writes their own, and then you invite them to share it. So you're not telling them about their social atom. You're saying, you tell me about your social atom. And of course, because you know how to read it, you can interject things. But you see that if you do that in a group, for example, it's very interesting to see everybody read, write, and share their social atom. You learn a lot. If you do it yourself, it's amazing how much feeling comes up when you look at the page and why you organized it as you did. Now, you can do a social atom for anything. You can do, in treatment, I always do a social atom when people come to treatment. Do a social atom, as many as you want during treatment, but certainly the family of origin.
Yeah, sure.
And then when you leave, do a future social atom, how you'd like
How
your
you'd
life
like to go.
to your look. So it gives you a map. One other social atom I started doing with trauma work that really helped the work was a frozen moment social atom. You know, I was presenting when I started doing trauma work, I was presenting at all these different conferences, and I noticed people started coming up with these huge traumas that they wanted to do at a conference. And that didn't, usually people have a sense of leveling at a conference. They come up with not their most enormous issue. But for some reason, people started bringing these. And then I would, they would freeze. I would try to help them unfreeze. It was complicated and difficult. And I went away feeling unhappy with the work I'd done in a few situations. Nothing terrible, but just that wasn't as, the warm-up wasn't there, the material was so heavy, and I realized I was starting to get known for doing trauma work, but I wasn't seeing myself that way. So I started to think, how can we shift this? And I asked people to come up and do an atom of a moment in their lives when they froze. And that cleared up the problem, because they came owning their own frozenness. Otherwise, they would come and enter into the therapeutic moment and then freeze. Yep. They would deal with their family and freeze all over again.
They will imagine themselves being frozen, and they will do the atom, the social atom map.
Yeah, the question is, when was the time you froze, shut down? When you were speechless. And most people don't have any trouble finding that time. So they would do a social atom of that, and then take ownership of that. So we would start with that. Okay, who could play the frozen part of you? Who could play the part of you that blah, 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 blah. Who do you need to talk to? So that frozen moment solved that problem.
Is there anything we have missed? Or
well, you talked about the Greek theater.
Oh yes, sure.
So
absolutely.
one thing that I remember when I'm Greek, and so we were traveling in Greece. And we went to this amphitheater in Athens, Erodo Attikou, and we saw, I think, a play. The Greek tragedy is fabulous. It's this gong, and then suddenly, the chorus comes. But we talked to somebody who was touring us also, and I said, there were all these little rooms down here's the stage, but there were all these funny little rooms at the bottom. And I said, what are those rooms for? And he said, that's where people would go and talk about the feelings that came up during the festival.
Oh.
I was 12 at the time, I think, or 14 or something. I've never forgotten it. It was just unbelievable to me. So psychodrama is very like that. You are using, and we use even the language in psychodrama of the Greek tragedies, protagonist, auxiliary egos, and so much, but the stage, all those concepts are very, the Greeks use theater, everybody, all cultures use theater in this way. Shamans act out things in order to heal them. This is nothing new.
Did you wrote somewhere that we were acting out from birth, or we
act hungers? Is that what you think?
I probably have it here somewhere.
But being of actions from birth. Being of actions from birth.
The urge to act out is inborn. You wrote that in emotional repair through action methods.
Yeah.
That's about that. It's
important.
It's born. So it's whatever is.
We're built for action.
Yeah, and that's maybe a good definition of being human, right?
Yeah. we act.
We act. So the Greek strategy is creating our own mythology, so we can use this mythology just to process so many things. Right?
Well, everyone has their own story,
Yeah.
and everyone needs their own stage. Pablo Neruda, what did he say? We all need to dance our clumsy dance and sing our sorrowful song. But verte buena mandolino nasas dixo pospono. It's this Greek thing. Bring me a mandolin, and I can tell you how I hurt. You want to get this up and out there, through song, through stage, through somehow. So psychodrama is one of those somehows.
That's a beautiful word for the end. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Thank you.